Well, you know, when I was reading this document, I either didn't know or I didn't remember, but it was inspired by Jack Pransky. He came up with the idea, you know, like Judy came up with the idea of doing the book, Sid's Book Club. Jack Pransky came up with the idea of this paper.
He did, yeah.
And George and Elsie wrote it. And then who do I call? How do I call these people that signed it? I signed it. So we wanted.
No, but the thing is it's absolutely a collaborative effort.
Let's talk more about that.
There wasn't anybody that wasn't collaborating. Everybody did their part.
For example.
So, for example, Elsie and I did the heavy lifting.
Right.
But then there were people who contributed.
Who read it and contributed.
Yeah, and contributed.
Okay, and I'm going to read those names.
Okay.
Christine Heath, Judy Sedgman, Dickon Bettinger, Mark Howard, Rita Shuford, William Pettit, Chip Chipman, Jan Chipman, Kathy Casey, Judy Banks, Linda Pransky, Sandy Crott, Leslie Miller, and Joseph Bailey were all contributors.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a bit.
Yeah, and everybody. Well, I'm repeating myself.
Go ahead.
Everybody did their part.
Weighed in on it.
It weighed in it
and said, like, I think this should be changed. Or,
yeah.
But I want to, before we get into discussion of the points, I want to talk a little bit about the purpose. The purpose of the paper was to offer what we learned from Sid about how to effectively share our understanding of the three principles. So it's not about, the paper in a sense isn't about the three principles per se, although it is in a way. It's about sharing it. That's the point.
Right.
Let's talk about how to share it. So it's exclusively about guidance for sharing the principles. So these points that we're going to discuss, these 13 points are about, it's like a guidance system. Now, the other thing that's important is that
you seem really organized.
I am.
I'm impressed.
I know, me too.
You're all business.
I know, I'm all.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you got me. Yeah, it's a self-image thing.
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
You're trying to be, I can tell you're trying to be dignified.
All right.
Dignified.
Stop it. Okay, so, but no, so the document, it's not designed as a substitute for Sid's materials, okay? The most important thing is, in our minds, the people that sign this paper are Sid's materials. And we use his materials in our work, in our client work. We use his materials all the time. So these guidelines are not a substitute for Sid's materials, which I think is really important to know. Yeah?
Yeah, in a way, I mean, in a manner of speaking, we're the amateurs.
Yeah.
And Sid Banks is the professional.
Okay. And then I just wanted to, before we go into the 13 points, before we go into discussion, there was a paragraph that I wanted to read that I just really, really loved about the three principles. And it goes like this. The three principles are universal and spiritual in nature. Spiritual in that they are both form and formless, universal, because they apply not only to everyone, but to everything. They do not originate in the psychology of each person, but rather derive from the formless energy behind life. Just as the physiological heartbeat comes from the life force, not from the heart itself, the principles are the all-inclusive expression of what Sid discovered as the heart core of this understanding. They are the foundation of our teaching. I love that.
Yeah. That's very profound.
I know. It is. And it's such, we feel so privileged. We were talking the other day, George and I, or actually last night, about how privileged we felt to have been a part of Sid's life and a part of the understanding, and to actually have just met him. We just felt so privileged and so delighted in how it's spread throughout. His understanding is spread throughout the world.
Yeah.
Okay. So now the key points.
So I guess the way at this point you say, that said,
here are the key points that Sid pointed us towards. Okay.
no, we can go over them.
And then people can ask questions.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to lay out the key points, and then we're going to, give time for people to ask questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first point is the health of the helper. Now, I could read what you and Elsie wrote, but so can they. So what about if we just talk about what we see as the health of the helper?
Okay.
Like, what do you see as the health of the helper?
Well, I see the health of the helper in the adage, you can't give away something that you don't have for yourself.
That's right.
That to me, the helper.
And Sid made that very clear.
Oh yeah.
Because he would say, and he was really cute about it, he'd say, teach what you know.
Yeah.
Not what you know. You go, teach what you know, not what you know. In other words, teach what's a reality to you, as opposed to what you think is a good idea.
Yeah.
It's like good ideas come from the intellect, and what you know comes from a heartfelt expression.
Yeah, that's a nice way to say it.
It's like, so when Sid asked me to teach, which I couldn't believe he did, I was like, really? You want little old me to teach the principles? You're like joking.
Yeah.
He said, no. And I said, well, teach what? He said, teach what you know. I said, well, I don't know very much, anything. He says, I know, but you know a little bit.
Yeah.
You've had insights about thought and reality, and you've had insights about consciousness and mind. He says, teach that. I said, well, it's not much. He says, I don't care. Just teach what's real to you, what's changed your life. That's what you want to teach, what's real to you and what's changed your life. You want to add anything more?
No, that's good.
So the health of the helper is another way of saying it is what you know that's helped you to have a more stable, happier life. Point 2, look to people's innate mental health, not their symptomology.
Well, that is a really strong statement, because that's where the field of psychology has, in my mind, has gone wrong.
Because they deal with the content of people's thinking or the behavior
Yeah, they yeah.
rather than guiding people to their own mental health. See, I thought before I met Sid, I thought that mental health came from the outside. Like your therapist would essentially fix you and give you mental health. Like, fix me, show me how to be mentally healthy. Well, one afternoon with Sid, he made this offhand remark to me. He said, everybody lives in mental health, whether they know it or not. He said, even people in mental institutions live in mental health.
Or another way of saying, everybody has lucid moments, even if they're institutionalized, they still have their
Mental health.
lucid moments.
Well, in other words, mental health resides within people. And it can't, and when Sid made that offhand comment about everybody sits in mental health, it really hit me like a ton of bricks. I really had an insight about it. And my insight was, oh my goodness, I'm mentally healthy. And I thought I wasn't.
Or another way to say it is, I'm mentally healthy and I didn't realize it.
That's right. So we as practitioners are pointing people towards their internal mental health, not their symptomology, not their external, their so-called mentally ill thoughts and mentally ill behavior. We're not grappling with that and trying to fix that. We're pointing to them to their own inner wisdom and them to find and get a hold and realize their own mental health. And then they fix themselves.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's easy. And it just have to keep pointing them. But here's again, back to the first point, the health of the helper. You have to know that you're mentally healthy. You have to know that you have mental health. And you have to know where it comes from. And you have to know it's universal. You see, if you know mental health is universal, it's easy to teach. It's easy to share. It's easy to show. It's easy to point if it's a realization. Now, if it's just a good idea, then it's difficult. It's coming from the intellect, it's difficult because there's always doubt. But when it comes from a realization from your heart, there's no doubt. So you just have to wait them out until they realize. You have to wait your client out until they realize their own mental health. And that is, for me, it's a gift. To watch somebody wake up to their own mental health, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What a gift. What a gift. What a payoff. I mean, the feeling it gives me as a practitioner to watch somebody wake up to their own mental health. It's just so much fun. Insight and pure intelligence. I'm going to read this one. The realization of innate wisdom or pure intelligence comes from within the listener via insight. The realization of innate wisdom or pure intelligence comes from within the listener via insight. Everyone has innate wisdom within them, him, her. Wisdom is realized in real time via personal thought. This is where lasting mental and behavioral change comes from. Now, see, when I'm talking, you want to say
No,
something?
no, go ahead.
Okay. So here's what's just was so beautiful, because see, I thought that people changed through intellectual analysis. So you analyzed your problems, analyzed your emotions, and then you would change. That's what I thought before I met Sid. A lot of work, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering there. And then Sid, in talking with Sid and listening with Sid, I realized, no, it's like change comes through insight,
Mhm.
from a sight from within, from your own wisdom, from a deeper intelligence. It comes from an insight. Now, he would talk about that and I'd go, yeah. But then when it happened to me, where I had a massive insight and changed, I was like, oh, it's true. He's not kidding. He's not just saying that. It's actually true that people change via insight, not through intellectual analysis. Deepening levels of consciousness. Now, this is interesting. This is a mystery to me, deepening levels of consciousness. So I remember when I was around Sid for the first couple of years, I kept getting more and more understanding, more and more, I get more and more understanding from my insights, which would build my grounding, which would help the impact I had on clients and my own, feeling for life in a way that was my own happiness. So this was happening just all the time in the first couple of years, where just more understanding, more feeling, more impact, and then it stopped.
What do you mean stop?
Well, it's like the insight stopped, the understanding stopped. It's like I had all this understanding that I gained from insights, and then all of a sudden my insights stopped. Which in what I'm essentially saying is that those insights and that understanding elevate your level of consciousness. In other words, what you're conscious of is more universal and true, as opposed to more personal and small. Since teaching allow you to your consciousness to expand and elevate, so that you're seeing bigger picture, you're seeing more universal understanding, which is impersonal, as opposed to the personal kind of specific, what about me? And
No, I didn't understand that very
okay,
well.
let's see. Well, you talk about levels of consciousness, what it means to you. What does levels of consciousness mean to you?
Well, I think it means that a person can expand their understanding.
So I was trying to say,
Yeah,
in a very wordy way.
yeah,
But there's also an element when you expand your level of consciousness, you become less personal and more impersonal.
yeah. That's the part. Yeah,
And like I used to react to the word impersonal. I thought that it meant you were cold and uncaring.
yeah.
And I realized that it wasn't cold and uncaring. It was just you saw the truth of life and you stopped reacting in a personal way.
Yeah. You didn't take life personally.
You didn't take life personally because you saw the logic of it.
Just think of how uh, it would, how valuable that would be if a person didn't take things personally.
Yeah.
Just that alone would make a huge difference to their mental health.
I know it's like when you see him personally, it really protects you.
Yeah.
Like let me give you an example to bring it down to the practical. So I was at this restaurant recently called Tweets that is about a half an hour drive from our house. It's a great restaurant. And it's just open on the weekends and it's very small and the parking is very difficult. So I parked in somebody's driveway, which was my bad. But the driveway was right next to the restaurant. And I was in the restaurant so I could keep an eye on the car. Still my bad. Okay. This woman comes out and she's furious. And she finds who's parked in her driveway, me,
Yeah.
and comes at me and she's so angry. And I said, look, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done it. But it doesn't do anything for her. And then it's like, I looked at her and I saw, this is what I thought. So it really helped me. I saw a woman that needed to be angry.
Yeah.
It was like was a woman who needed to express anger. And I happened to be the catalyst for that. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so it didn't affect me that she got angry because it was like,
You understood.
I understood. It's like, I saw her. So I didn't take it personally. I don't know if that was helpful, but it sure helped me.
No, it was.
Yeah.
It was
As an example.
a good example.
But I know that deepening where I was going when I got complicated was that when I stopped deepening in my level of consciousness, and I was like, it was a mystery to me why it was deepening for so long and then it stopped. And it was a mystery. It's like, how come it stopped and how come it hasn't started again? And it was about 2 years later that my understanding started to deepen again. It was like it just stopped and started. It made no sense. And I had no understanding of why. And so to me, the deepening of one's level of consciousness, my point is that it's a mystery. Why and when is a mystery to me. Because I would do everything I thought to help myself, like listen to Sid, get really quiet, nothing would happen. And then all of a sudden it started happening.
On its own.
On its own. So deepening of levels of consciousness is a mystery. It happens. And it's like insight. Insight's a mystery, like when it happens and when it doesn't.
I think we should
Move on.
onward and upward.
Onward and upward. Enough of all that. Oh, a conversation between friends. I love this one.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
There's great value in leveling the playing field and talking with clients as if it were a conversation between friends. That was a lifesaver.
Yeah, and that is very profound. The difference between a so-called client conversation and a conversation between friends is huge.
The difference in the feeling of it.
Yeah.
Because
you're not talking down to the person.
Yeah.
You're laying leveling the playing field and talking to them like they're just an ordinary person.
Because before I felt like I had to help them. So they're here and I'm here and I'm trying to help them. And it can get very, well, stressful in a way, where the feeling is hard.
Well, you know what, it also is. You, uh, you're the authority.
Yeah.
And that is pressure.
Pressure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But see, I love
And
this
it's wonderful to get out from under
of
that
pressure. Because see, I love partnering with my clients because I feel totally comfortable saying to them, I'm out of ideas. What do you think?
Yeah.
Or I don't know what to say. What would you say to yourself? Or help me here. Help me help you. I mean, no problem. I love partnering with them. It's me and we're working together on this here. Now, and it makes it fun.
Yeah.
Makes it really fun. Okay.
And it makes it light. That's the other thing. You don't feel the pressure.
Yeah. Of having to be in charge and having to
Yeah.
fix and
Yeah.
being the authority.
You get out from
Yeah.
the expert.
Yeah. Get out from the expert.
And when I was first in psychology, I thought the idea was to be the expert. I thought that was
the idea.
That was what I was brought to the table.
Of course.
And I was thinking, if I didn't have if I wasn't the expert, then how would I have credibility with my clients?
Now,
but what I realized is that it was the humanness is what gave me credibility
well, it's
with people.
You're really when you partner with your client, you're modeling the humanness, and you're modeling innate health, because you're just like, you're showing them something that everybody's equal in that way. Everybody's the same.
Because I know that there are the people who are in the principles, have a lot of respect for the principle, and they feel, even as that's true, they feel pressure. And if I ask them, where's the pressure coming? And essentially what they're saying is, I'm supposed to be the expert.
Mm-hmm. I know the principles and they don't.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
I was thinking that we might open it up for questions now and let people participate before we move on to more points. What do you think?
I think we should just continue on.
Okay. Now this one, listening to truth. You want me to read it?
Yeah.
We learned from Sid that the truth of the principles can only be seen via insight, no manner of trying to figure things out ever really helped. Insight is not limited by anything. It can happen at any time from any state of mind. That said, however, a quiet, reflective mind is a more conducive medium for insight rather than an active, analytical listening process. Well, I don't know what else to say about that. You?
No. think we're good. And we can go back and revisit all these things.
Mhm. We can?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. 7, listening to clients. We learn to listen beyond the client's story to hear their wisdom and point them in that direction. This will help them see that they know what to do no matter what their history has been or what has happened to them. Now, to me,
So really what you're saying
Yeah.
is your clients have the answers,
within,
even though they may not say that, they have the answers.
and you know what's interesting is they don't see them. I find with my clients that they have answers and they kind of blow by them. They don't register on them. They don't register on their own wisdom.
Mm.
So one of the things I do is I say, wait a minute, listen to what you just said. It was
Mm.
really wise. What you just said was really wise, and you just blew by it. They go, oh yeah, it's pretty good. But so and again, it's the energy or the feeling of listening for the client's wisdom is really pleasure. It's a lot of pleasure to listen to the client's wisdom. Not so much pleasure listening to the details of their suffering, but listening to the wisdom within them is just really good. Whole nother way of working with people, bypassing all the symptomology and listening for wisdom. But one thing that I learned that you got to point it out sometimes.
You know, Linda, I was thinking that you were right about,
Love opening it up.
yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah.
Yeah. Because I think there are people that have things to offer
yeah,
and questions
Yeah.
to ask. Okay. So Bonnie, do you want to open it up for people?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have a question or comment, please raise your digital hand up. And there's Dubin.
Hello. Good evening,
Hi.
everybody. One of my favorite couples back at it. It's a pleasure. One comment quickly is that the topic was last topic was listening to clients' wisdom, and then you decided to open it up to everybody else. I don't know if that was intentional, but I just wanted to point out that interesting bit of synchronicity there.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, I didn't miss that one.
No,
You're pointing out my own wisdom here now. That was good. That blew by.
You see what you just did? You see
Yeah,
what-
I know. That's good.
I don't really have well, no, I do have a question. Something that was coming up for me actually earlier around the levels of consciousness. I'm always just fascinated around the kind of unpredictability yet consistent nature of it. So in regards to kind of working with people and maybe like the frustration that one can feel when someone's not getting it, and like frustration and patience. So I'm saying that in regards to working with people, but also kind of for myself in regards to levels of consciousness and seeing more.
I'm sorry. Did you ask a question?
No, I didn't really. It was more for you to, I don't know, I wanted to hear more from you around frustration and patience.
Oh. Okay. So actually I'm the perfect person to ask because that's my, that's one of my, what I would call one of my frailties is I can be very, very patient. But the thing is, see, when I'm working with people, I feel so much in service to them that there's no room for impatience. There's no room for it. It's like I just put it down because I'm in service. And so when you're in service, it's a very impersonal thing, and there's no room for personal. Now, see, that came as an insight to me, so I can do it. So you can do your insights. It's hard to do your good ideas, but you can do your insights. So it's I'm very, more impatient in my personal life. In my professional life, there's no room for it. It's just like, plus I also remember how long it took me to get a realization when I first started listening to Sid. It took me a long time to get a realization. I really stuck with it.
It was
Really.
very humbling.
It was very humbling because, see, you never know. It's such a mystery because in all the years I've worked with clients, some clients, they get insights the first session. You work with them, and other people don't get insights till the last session. Some people don't get insights until they leave. It's such a mystery. Such a mystery. So I guess it's humbling to me in that it took me so long to get an insight that I understand.
Now, what are some of the other questions?
Oh, okay.
Richie?
Hi, Linda. Hi, George.
Hi.
Right.
I love listening to you guys. You are modeling for me comes across as innocence, authenticity. It's like real people.
Wow.
And when you talked about, just talk about what you know, you just, it's like when this level of authenticity and honesty and what feels to me like innocence is so engaging and attractive. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, well,
Well,
thank
that's a
you.
very nice compliment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It feels good to give you that compliment.
Yeah, it does.
And I think I've struggled with the notion of my innate health.
Really?
Yeah. And as you were sharing earlier, I thought I just want to share a little story with you. And I think this helps me, and maybe it'll help others. I don't know. But I had a friend. This was really a friend. It wasn't me. I had a friend, and she had two children.
I know about the proverbial friend.
Yes. And
I'm hip to that.
Particularly when they say it wasn't me.
It wasn't me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It wasn't me. It was really a friend. And my friend had two children, and one child had lots of challenges, physical and mental challenges, couldn't speak, had difficulty walking, cerebral palsy, all sorts of things. And the little girl was just fine. But she sent both of them to the same preschool. And so when this little girl, let's call her Jane, when she went to preschool, she looked at all the kids around her, and they had crutches, wheelchairs, they weren't verbal, they couldn't speak, they had seizures. And one day she came home and she said, "Mom, I'm normal." And when I think about this idea about innate health, it's like I want to believe that I have innate health, but I guess I look at the world outside of me and I get convinced by the world outside that that's a reflection of me rather than the other way around. That make any sense?
Yes. Yeah, I used to think that way because the negativity or the dysfunction of the world, in my mind, was an indicator that I should feel that way too.
Yeah.
And then I realized the fallacy of that, because it just was one way of thinking. And I didn't have to think that way. It was like, because that kind of thinking created that kind of dysfunction and that kind of negativity, and I didn't have to join it. I didn't want to join it.
Yeah.
The realization of the power of thought to create your personal reality just really struck me, and it allowed me to disengage and ignore that. Now, people would say to me, you live in denial. And I'm like, yeah, I'm denying that kind of reality. I want to be in the reality. I want to create the reality of something else, not that.
Mm.
But
It's-
see, the thing is, what's also true is like I have frailty. I have human frailty. Okay. I thought that if I got involved in the principles, I could get rid of my human frailty. No, but and then I realized that now I know you're going to say this is bullshit, but I started to see my human frailty as beautiful.
Mm.
Because we are human and we are spiritual both. We're human and we're spiritual. We're spiritual beings and we're also human beings with human frailty.
Yeah.
Now, just because we have human frailty doesn't mean we're mentally ill. See, some people think, well, if I have human frailty, there's something wrong with me. Well, no, it's part and party of the package that you get on this earth.
Yeah.
It's normal to have human frailty. See, that's what I realized. It's normal to have human frailty. Now, when I realized that it was normal to have human frailty, I started trying to fix my human frailty. And I started to see it. I started to see it, not all the time, but some of the time is beautiful.
Mm.
Because one time this friend of mine gave me this poem about a teacup, an antique teacup that had a crack in it. And the crack in the antique cup made it more beautiful than it was if it hadn't had the crack in it. And I thought, that's me.
Yeah.
And that's everybody.
Yeah.
The crack in the teacup makes it more beautiful somehow. It was true. I love that poem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking,
We move on to another question.
well, it's
Or
not
what?
that. I thought we would finish.
I think we should take a few more questions before we start.
Okay.
Okay. Is that okay if we stop? If we move on? Okay.
Thank
Right.
you. Thank you.
Who else?
Anna?
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So good to see everyone. And oh, God, so much gratitude for this group of friends. I had a lot of things come to me, but they have passed. And when you share that, the last thing that has been alive for me is, this expression, the human spirit, and the spirit and human. And I feel that it's all one, the human and spirit, and the spirit and human. And when it comes to the levels of consciousness, I feel it's basically about what I'm identifying with. So when I identify with
I'm sorry, I missed that sentence. Say that again.
When it comes to the levels of consciousness, what I'm seeing is that when I'm identified with the human, with the very vulnerable, made up human idea of who I am, I feel small, I feel all of that. As I identify with the spirit, I just grow in a good feeling, and that lifts my level of consciousness to see me as, the wholeness. And so sometimes, I love that this community is such a great place to be reminded of that, because all that's happening is that I've made myself small innocently by thinking so much about me and me and me. So sometimes people will come and say, but that's not who you are. And I'll be like, oh yes, there's that deeper dimension to my being that is easy to overlook because it's invisible, silent, and yeah. So that's what is coming up to me when it comes to a level of consciousness, that what I'm identifying with is what informs how I feel.
Yeah.
That's again the mental health working.
Yes.
That's working for me. It's not a problem to solve. I just love being reminded that feelings don't need fixing. It's just a misunderstanding.
Yeah,
That was beautiful. That was
Thank you.
beautiful.
very profound.
Thank you. That was very beautiful. Very beautiful.
I'm nervous, but I just really feel that looking towards that spiritual and just getting quiet with it is what all comes from.
Well,
And
you
it's
know
not
what?
exclusive, because you say insights can come from any state of mind. So it's not like I can only find insights by getting quiet. So that's another beautiful thing to hear today. So thank you.
We'll take two more and then move on.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. Well, you know, when you were talking, I levels of consciousness has always baffled me too. And it's something I rarely discuss with clients, especially early on, because it gets them kind of looking at a rigid, like they're looking at climbing a tree or something, you know, that they have to take this level and that level, and then how am I doing kind of thing. And I think it's much more fluid than,
Yeah,
and in my own experience of it, and I found myself yesterday talking to a client who, it doesn't matter what the problem was, but she was really felt hopeless that she could change. She felt like she was really being kicked around by life. You know, it just looked to her like all these bad things had happened, and a lot of bad things had happened. But, you know, and I said, you know, here's the thing that I'd like to ask you. It's like when you tuck yourself in at night and snuggle into your bed and start to fall asleep, do you ever have a moment where you think, I'm really okay? And she said, yes, but I think I'm kidding myself.
Oh.
yeah,
Yeah, you know, because then I wake up in the morning and all the problems pour into my head again.
yeah.
And and I thought, wow, that kind of opened my mind to the idea that we do really move around, you know,
Yeah,
through levels of consciousness, and that maybe the levels is misleading. That we're really talking about consciousness as though it was like a quantum field, you know, and that you move around in it as your thinking changes.
Right. That's true, Judy. But talk to me about this then, because with an elevation in consciousness, if you want to use that word, which can be with an elevation of consciousness comes understanding. The understanding stays. It doesn't move around, in my experience.
I would agree with that, but I think our connection to it weakens and tightens. You know,
Yes.
yes.
That's to understanding weakens and tightens. Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, you know, I had a huge insight at some point in my life that, you know, you could love people in your life that you really just loved whole heart and soul in it, and it didn't matter if they liked you or not.
yeah,
You know, it just didn't matter. That had nothing to do with it. And then and that's the impersonal, you know, that love is an internal experience. And then sometimes it gets personal because you start thinking about the unfairness of life or whatever. And I see that a lot in my clients. They you know, they get into this beautiful feeling about life, generally speaking, or a really optimistic, hopeful feeling about everything going on. And then they start thinking, and they get, you know, start sort of dropping into the personal. So I love what you said about personal and impersonal, Linda, because I think that's really what it is. I think that the more our thinking is impersonal and not about us and just about life and beautiful feelings, the more we experience our whatever our highest level of consciousness is at that time.
And to take that a little further, because see, to the extent that you remember that that's happening, in the moment is your level evolution of consciousness.
Yeah.
That you go, oh, I'm feeling bad because I'm thinking personal, as opposed to I have no idea what's going on. What happened?
Yeah, that's great. That's true. That's wonderful. But anyway, I got a lot out of what your conversation about that. I just wanted to share that. So
Well, thank you.
you're welcome.
Yeah,
Very-
good.
that means a lot, Judy.
Well, let's move on to Bill Pettit.
Oh,
You're
and hear you, Bill.
gotta unmute. There you go.
I may not be good, but I'm slow. Want to go back a couple of people's questions, and it may or may not be helpful, but the idea of getting frustrated either with our own progress or some client that we're attempting to assist. And they talked about frustration. And I think for me, when I experience that, I'm reminded, Linda, I remember when you were going through the missing link, when you said that you read that statement. It was so many powerful statements, but when Sid says that when the desires of your mind trouble your soul, it's time to let go of your desires. And so when I feel frustration, either with myself or with somebody else's progress, again, I'm echoing what's been said before. I start thinking personally, but it's that I've got investment in things being in a certain way. And the feeling, Sid says, that we're all going to get psychological viruses. That's part of being human, but we've got a virus detector, and it's our feeling level. And so when we lose that lighthearted, loving feeling, it just means that's what's happened, and we don't have to go to analysis, as you've pointed out. All we have to do is do the best we can to be present. We don't have to figure anything out. And the cork's home is on the surface. It's always trying to get to the surface. And I think when we talk about levels of consciousness, I have no problem with that, because Sid talked about, I think Joe Bailey asked him in the Hawaii lectures, what's the difference between levels of understanding, levels of awareness, level of consciousness? As you kind of pointed out, Linda, he said they're all the same. What three ways of trying to talk about the same thing, that as your level of understanding rises, your level of consciousness, your level of awareness. And in the Enlightened Gardener Revisited, which we're going to be going through, he says your level of consciousness and your level of meditation are the same thing.
That's right.
And so it's just a way of saying, so when we lose that feeling, if we just know that that's just a signal that our level of understanding, we've either forgotten what we know, or we're getting an opportunity to go through another couple of doors of understanding, of the infinite doors of understanding, where it's an opportunity. And seeing it as an opportunity is very different than seeing it as I've failed again, or I'm not learning fast enough. And anyway, I don't want to get any wordier than I am, but those are just thoughts. Yeah.
I love what you said about the relationship between desire and frustration. That's perfect. Perfect. Because it's really an attachment to something.
I remember George trying to help people in business when I was with you a few times. George telling them it was just foreign language to them to think that the less they're invested in the outcome of whatever they're doing, whatever, the less investment they have, the more that they will access their wisdom, and it'll work out well for everybody, you know.
Yeah. And
And
that's,
that's a foreign language to some people.
it
It
is.
really,
And that's like, that's one thing that's been difficult for me to get across to my students is when I say, you can't care if they change.
Right, right.
You can't care. And like, what do you mean not care? Of course I care. I know, but so it's difficult for people to see the beauty of that and the freedom of that and the power of it.
Right.
'Cause
Because
it's
we
the
all had that.
It's the opposite of what you're doing, the opposite of what you want to do or what you've been taught to be.
As a physician, I think of it as all I can do is give the penicillin. What happens after that? It might be a day later, it may be 3 weeks later. I've had people 9 months, 10 months later wake up. I'm sure you have too. So if I'm there not invested in, that's when my ego is involved, when I'm invested in the outcome. I
Yeah.
care, I'm present, I care enough to be present and not be invested. That is foreign to people, like you say, Lena. Anyway,
Thank you, Bill.
you're welcome.
So Sue is next?
Actually,
Me.
Bernie would be next.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Linda and George. You know, my question has kind of evolved as I've been sitting here waiting my turn, and it's about levels of consciousness. And it's really about, like, my question initially was about, yeah, as I deepen my understanding, it's like my level of consciousness gets higher. So if I'm working with someone, oh, my level of consciousness is higher than theirs. But then I'm going, I don't think that's an effective way of looking at it, because, you know, Judy was pointing to it. It's much more, I don't know, amorphous than that. That's the word that's coming to me. And so where I'm coming from now is, like, you're not think of it as levels, but think of it as something bigger. And this little thought popped in my head is like, it's almost like when we're in love, our level of consciousness raises because we're just so much more expansive. And so our level of consciousness is something that's variable. That's one way of, that's kind of how I'm looking at it. I'm curious if you've got any thoughts on that.
I don't have any more thoughts on it. I mean, it just, I think going back to what George said is, I think it, like Sid defined levels, he would say, levels of consciousness is just what you're aware of, right? Whether you're aware of your personal thought or your impersonal thought, it's just what you're aware of, the end. And you said you could write a book this thick on levels of consciousness, but most of it would be irrelevant. It would, because it's so simple. And yet, if we, to the extent we don't understand it, we go into our head about it. Because we're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, maybe I'm doing that.
We all do that. I do that. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
George and Linda, do you remember the time the guy, I think he was from Germany, was in La Conner, and George was explaining levels, and he drew a line, you know, basically said security and insecurity and your levels vary and so on. And the guy says, women below the line, men above the line. I'll never forget that.
that's right.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, but I just said. No, I remember that was shocking.
Yeah.
That was just shocking. But you know, a lot of people think that way.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting that people think that way? Okay, Sue, and then we'll move on to the next point after Sue. Oh, no, we got one more.
Okay.
Isabel and Sue. Okay.
Okay, I'll be quick. I'm fairly new to being an apprentice practitioner. I teach at a university and lead discussion groups. And I have one client who continues. I've known him for a long, long time. Then he became a client. And we had an agreement. When he's my client, we don't talk about stories about fishing. Unless it relates to something he wants to know about. So what I've noticed is, and maybe you can help me because I'm kind of new at this, he wants to tell about fishing and what he did yesterday and what he's going to do tomorrow and blah, blah, blah. And in my own insecurity, I'm not quite sure how to deal with the blah, 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 chit chat during a session. So maybe you can help me with that.
Well, you know, what occurs to me is I'd ask him what it does for him to talk about fishing. What does it do for you?
What is in it for you?
Yeah, like what is it? Does it what? Because clearly it must give him a feeling. I would assume it gives him a feeling that he's looking for. So I get curious and I kind of like, what's, you know, in not in a judgmental way, but in a way of curiosity and puzzlement. It's like, what does it do for you to talk about fishing as opposed to something else? What does it do for you?
And it wouldn't be a rhetorical question.
Oh, sorry.
You'd be interested in what his answer was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because I've known him forever and we've been fishing together and I know it gives him a lot of joy. So my question is, do I say, time out, time out? Can we talk about fishing later? So what is it that you really want to talk about today?
Let me ask, no, here's the question. It's like, what do you want to talk? It sounds like, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
See, what do you want to do?
Yeah, I don't really want to talk.
What do you mean?
I mean, I want to listen. I want to listen to what is in his heart and why he wants to be a client with me. And I want to listen. And what I hear is chit chat, chit chat, chit chat.
Well, but the thing is, see, like, what is your contract? Is he there to learn about the principles?
Yeah, he's in the discussion group. He's in the university group.
Yeah.
He wants to learn. Yeah.
I would see when I have a client and we have an understanding, like they've come because they want X, but they won't, it's like they don't talk about X. I said, well, you wanted to talk about X. Has that changed? What do you want to talk about? Why are you here? I'd want to find out what they want to talk about, what they want to know. Now, I'm there, very clearly, I'm there to help people, Yeah. To help people in a way that I don't know how to say it. I don't know. I could say a whole bunch of different things. I'm there to help people find a different feeling. I'm there to help people find understanding. I'm there to help them. Now, if my client said to me, well, I just want to talk about fishing, I don't want to talk about anything else. And I'd be like, well, okay, but it feels awkward to have for me to charge you, for me to listen to you about fishing. It feels awkward to me. I don't know if I want to do that.
Yeah.
See, I don't know what I'd say, but I'd work it out with them. It's like,
yeah,
what I'm telling you essentially underneath all of my verbiage is to say, work it out with them.
And what working it out would be, what it would look like is you'd
Get a meeting of the minds.
Getting a meeting of the minds.
Because see, you might feel fine. You might be different than me. You might feel fine about charging him a fee to talk about fishing. You might, but see, I don't know that I would feel fine about that. I don't know. But
Yeah,
then again,
yeah.
if he's fishing puts me in a state of elation, I go, okay. That would be a real help to someone if they went up into a state of elation talking about
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
That would be a real help.
Yeah, what I have said is, George, oh, not George, Jim or whatever, is I've said, you want to go out to tea and talk about fishing? Is that what you want to do? Like almost confronting him, but I don't want to be confrontive.
Yeah.
Well, do you think that asking somebody, like getting curious and finding out how they see things, is being confrontive?
I might be thinking of that of myself, judging myself.
Because see, I
Yeah.
feel comfortable asking people anything if I don't have anything on it. In other words, if I am of a neutral mind and of a curious mind, and I don't care what their answer is,
Mhm.
I feel comfortable asking them anything.
Because otherwise it would be, it would look like a leading question.
Yeah, I
You
don't
see,
want to do that.
But
Yeah.
see, I don't care what they say.
You
I
know
just
what?
want,
I just had an insight just now. And that is that I've known this person so long that I do care. It's not like a paying client that I just met yesterday. I've known him 8 years. I've been fishing with him, other things. So I think I do care a lot. And maybe that's my downfall.
it's going to get in your way.
Yeah. I get it. Think.
Okay, one more and then we'll move on.
I'm done. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for bringing that up. Isabel.
I wanted to share just how powerful this understanding has been. Over the Thanksgiving holiday, I had a house full of guests and relatives and people. And one of the guests spent 5 days drinking every bottle of alcohol they could find, 2 bottles of vodka, 5 bottles of wine in the nighttime. And this is, this is a family member. And what came through was just amazing. In this understanding of the principles, I did not have to use words. I didn't have to teach what the 3 Ps were or anything. It was the time we've spent together sharing and communing with each other, even in these coaching, these grounding groups that we do. But what I saw was just so powerful, but it was really, in a sense, my homework, my understanding was contagious. I mean, I could feel it, but it wasn't me. And I even saw, through all of this alcohol that was in this person's body, this understanding could even transcend the alcohol. I could see her understanding of, and I'm not trying to insult anybody's practice or technique or anything, but through the 12 steps that this person had been trying to do for so long, 22 times in recovery programs, their wisdom came through. It was, they said, I'm so tired of trying to be good enough. And I'm so tired of all these techniques. And in this supposed relapse, as we might call it, was such profound wisdom of what was really needed. And then to be able to just meet that person in that place without being attached to an outcome or try to fix or make sure this person was going to meet this certain number of steps or blood alcohol level was, I just have to say, it was just the testament to this program with this teaching, this understanding. And it was all because, in a sense, I just remembered. It was me. I was remembering. And that well-being of, I'm okay, you're okay, we're okay, what got, this human Isabel through the whole thing, and all the family members in the household watching it. So I just had to share the testament of this, how powerful this is. So thank you for your
Well,
life.
Now, what I saw this story that you told as a great example of what was it? It was a great example of
How the principals can go through anything, they can go through alcohol.
no, it's not that. I lost what I was
Or
trying
that
to say.
the principals can come across even without words.
No,
Okay,
no.
we're gonna stop it. You know what I was thinking? Maybe we take a 5-minute break and then come back. We'll come back for another 45 minutes. Okay. So Georgie remembered what he wanted to say.
Yeah. The last woman
That talked.
Was trying to say something that I wanted to say.
You mean about the alcohol person?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And what I wanted to say is it goes back to that earlier point that let me see. You know, you don't want to see yourself as an expert, and you don't want to take on that pressure to be the expert, because what you want to see, what you see, what you want to see is it's just us girls talking. That's what it's going to look like. It's us girls talking. So that's what I wanted to say.
And
Well, you know
George, you know what you just said there was perfect, because it was just us girls talking. I actually sat there with her as she was just trying to sneak the vodka out of everything. I said, here, have a glass at least. Don't just be in the refrigerator by yourself. And
Yeah.
she decided not to sneak it. And I sat there really with this cup of tea. And I said, let's just sit, just talk.
Yeah.
And
That's exactly what the feeling of it. Exactly the feeling that you were trying to get.
Is us girls talking.
Us girls talking.
You know what took the judgment away for me with working with alcoholics? Because once I started listening to them, I had the thought, if I was in as much pain as they were, I'd be drinking too. And when I had that thought, it took all judgment off of what they did, their behavior. Because I was felt like, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm not in that pain.
Yeah.
That I feel like I have to drink.
All right. Well, let's onward and upward.
So we're moving on here to number 8. Stick with what you know. Okay, so it's important to stick with what we know, which is what is real for us, and not try to talk beyond our grounding. Now, a good example of that is some of us, including me, were trying to talk a bit above our grounding when we were talking about level of consciousness. You could feel it.
Yeah.
Because the feeling changes when there's a feel to the intellect and there's a feel to what's real. Like in my mind, it's like what's real for me, it comes out really clear. What's real for me comes out really clear. And it's like it has a clunk to it, like a gravity.
Or another way to say it is you don't want to talk above your pay grade.
So I can feel when I start to talk in my intellect, there's a different feeling, and that feeling is a feedback system to let me know where I am. Because there's a feeling, there's a different quality of feeling, and there's it's kind of a circular nature to it. I go, oh, I'm in my intellect. So now it's not like you feel bad and wrong about that. You just want to know where you're at. See? go, oh, I'm in my intellect. I think I'll stop now.
Yeah.
And what's true, and this is what Sid used to say, if you talk from what you know or what's real to you, you'll learn.
Yeah.
And he said that to me. And the first time he said that to me, I didn't really believe that it was true. But then I started, I could feel myself learning as I talked about what I knew.
Yeah.
And then he said, this is interesting, what little we know now might be decades ahead of its time. Number 9, sharing our story. This is great. This is a wonderful, I love this, because one of the things that I do, if I find myself in my intellect, one of the things that totally gets me back into my grounding if I share my stories.
Yeah.
It's great. It's like it's perfect. So the principles don't lend themselves to direct, easy explanation or expression. Stories and metaphors can be very helpful. And Sid would encourage us to share our own personal story, how we came to understand the principles and what we saw for ourselves. And like when I share my story, it brings back my understanding. It enlivens it. And there's a deep feeling of well-being that occurs when we share our story. And that can awaken that feeling in other people. And our story will also point to the results produced by the usage of the principle and provides hope. So you like Mr. Metaphor, you love metaphors.
Yeah, that's true.
And I love stories.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say a metaphor.
Okay.
It's almost like this, you tell the story and then it's kind of freeze dried, and then what brings it to life is the story brings it to life.
You mean the story brings the understanding to
Yeah.
life?
Yeah. Before that, it's kind of like freeze dried, it's kind of like what.
Well, I remember that I used to, I would get terribly insecure about public speaking, be talking to the principals to a group of people like you. I get terribly insecure, totally in my head. How should I start? What should I say? And then I realized that if I just told a story, if I just started with a story and I'd say, look, I'm going to start with a story, it would just ground me out of my insecurity and into the understanding. It's so easy and so simple. Okay. Number 10, connecting the dots. When people have insights, they change. They see and hear differently and feel different. But they may not always realize this at first. Pointing this out in the context of our clients' results has great value. It releases a feeling of hope. The feeling the client is experiencing is more informative to the practitioner than the client's grasp of content.
Say that again.
The whole thing?
No, the last sentence.
the feeling of the feeling the client is experiencing is more informative to the practitioner than the client's grasp of the content. Well, of course, it's like you're looking to see the feeling in the client deepen,
Or another way to say it is the spirit of it.
or the spirit of the client rise,
Yeah.
or the resiliency of the client
Yeah.
in the client, the spirits rise, or the resilience, more than the understanding that the information
The information.
around the principles.
Right.
So sometimes you have to point this out to people. I find I'm saying to my client, do you see that you're looking different? Do you see that you're feeling different? And they'll go, and they'll hesitate, and they'll reflect and go, well, yeah, I do a bit. I do feel different. But see, they didn't notice it. And in my mind, it's important to notice how you feel because it's your guidance system. It lets you know where you are.
And the thing is, if you see progress and you point it out, that helps people.
Yeah, it's very hopeful.
It's very hopeful
for clients.
Yeah.
Because like sometimes I'll do like a whole intensive with someone, and at the end of the intensive, I'll say, what are you seeing differently, and how are you seeing and behaving differently? And they'll say, well, I'm not. And I'll say, well, when you first came, you said you were, all you did was argue with your wife. Are you still arguing with your wife?
No.
Well, no, not that much. It's much, much better. So you also said you weren't sleeping. Are you sleeping? Well, yeah, I am. You also said that.
Now that you mention it.
Yeah. You also said that you weren't doing anything that was fun. Normally you did things that were fun. Like on the weekends, you'd do something that was really fun, and you'd stop doing that. Are you doing fun things on the weekend? Well, yeah, I am. It's like, well, and then I, in a nice way, I point out, well, isn't that change? Isn't that
a good thing?
Isn't that change? Haven't you changed?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Now that you mention it.
Now that you mention it, I've really, but this hasn't changed over here.
Yeah.
I haven't lost weight.
Yeah.
So they're not looking at, it's like what's changed has become invisible because they're looking at what they don't have rather than what they have. So sometimes you have to point out what's happened and what's changed, and allow them to be appreciative and grateful for that. So it's so funny, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I remember I had a client who called me and said, George, this didn't work, and I'm considering asking for a refund. So I said, well, talk to me. And I gave you, I talked about all the results that I saw, and I wanted to know whether he would say that.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, for example, how much time do you spend arguing? He said, well, no, we don't tend to argue. So I said, that's good, right? yeah, that would be a change in the right direction. I said, well, what extent would you say you're enjoying yourself? He says, well, I'm still enjoying myself a lot more than I used to. So what I felt as saying to them is, well, what are you complaining about? I don't understand why you're saying that you didn't get benefit from the session. And I actually said that, and I was, to tell you the truth, I was very irritated that they didn't see
They were ungrateful.
that they were ungrateful. And they said, well, now that you mention it, I said, well, that's what I'm interested. What would you point out now that I'm interested? What would you point out to me? And then he said, well, I guess things are very different than they used to be. I said, well, do you think that's a good thing, or do you think that's a bad thing? And you could tell that my tone wasn't so good, because I just was annoyed at him. And then he said, well, George, I apologize about bringing this up to you, because you're writing them on the money. And I said, well, no, I'm the one that should be apologizing. So I apologize for treating you harshly. And then that's where it ended. But it was, even though the change was very very profound, it was hard for the people to see it, because
They were looking for something else.
yeah.
Like, I remember we worked with this a daughter of a friend of ours who was really struggling. And she changed a lot. But our friend was upset and dissatisfied. And we said to him, "Ooh, she's so much better." Because he had us, instead of going in hospital, in a mental health hospital, he had her come to work with us. And he said, yes, she's much better. But then he didn't use these words, but these are the words that he was pointing, that what he was really truly saying. She's not a different person.
Yeah.
And when he said that, I realized, oh, he didn't like her.
Yeah.
She's really much better, functional.
Yeah, I remember this person.
Yeah.
This person was
Really.
yeah.
Like when she came here, and see, when she came here, essentially she said to me, you better be careful, because I might kill you.
Yeah. She said.
like, and I'm like, afterwards, I said to Judge, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
I didn't sign up for this. So, but she got really calmed down. She got much more just normalized, got much better. Yeah. But her dad, he didn't like what we did, because she wasn't a different person.
Yeah.
Interesting. Isn't that interesting? Now, I didn't take that personally because I realized, I was like, oh my goodness, he doesn't like her. And that's on him. It's on him. And, you know, it's not about her, it's about him. It's interesting. But anyway, moving on.
Moving on.
Stick to the principles. Sid reminded us that everyone has the wisdom and the understanding within themselves to stabilize and solve their problems. Practitioner techniques intended to improve client well-being, techniques disempower people.
Yeah.
Because they undermine the message that they have all they need within.
Already.
The principles empower people by pointing to them to their own wisdom, creativity, and natural resilience.
And that's why when people talk about techniques, I say to them, I'm sorry, I forgot what I was.
Well, maybe you'll remember in a minute.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting because me too. I was looking outside for the answers. I was looking to other people. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to think. Tell me how to be. Tell me. And when my clients do that to me, I'm saying, look inside. Look, what do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think? Just take a minute. Calm down and look. Look, what do you think? And 9 times out of 10, they'll come up with something really good. But they don't, there's like, they're in a habit of looking outside rather. It's really a habit.
Yeah.
Of looking outside rather than inside. And to realize, it's so interesting the way it happens, because you look inside, there's nothing, and then all of a sudden there's something. You just have to wait for it.
Yeah.
You know, you have to wait for it.
You have to wait for it.
It's like, I call it pop-up thinking. It's like all of a sudden something pops up or sneaks up and you hear it.
And it was there, it wasn't there.
And then it was there.
Yeah.
You just wait for it. It's like you ask a question and then you wait for it. What should I do? And then you wait for it. All kinds of things occur to you. We can have more of a discussion about that, but we'll go through the others and then we'll open it up again. Trust your inner wisdom, your pure intelligence. Ultimately, we all want to trust and follow our own wisdom, what we personally understand. That said, we also want to be open to hearing and seeing more than what we know now. This means listening from within and being open to hearing something new, something that will deepen our grounding and growth. Now, see, this is the important piece to me. Sid expressed the point eloquently by saying, don't be a follower, listen, but not follow. So you're open to listening to other people and seeing if whatever you're listening to stimulates an insight or an understanding around what they've said, but as opposed to following what they say without having that understanding or insight first. Having your heart in the right place. Not long after Sid Banks had his profound experience, he knew that what he had realized would be of great help to humanity. He set his sights on being of service and encouraging those who learned from him to point in that direction as well. While these three three principal practitioners obviously needed to make a living. It is wise to allow being in service to take precedence over personal gain. When we focus on service rather than feathering our own nest, we will find our teaching more fulfilling and impactful. We have seen time and time again that when our priority is being in service to humanity and being true to our own wisdom, the practical aspect of life inevitably falls into place, often in ways we couldn't possibly imagine. See, to me, simply, when people get all excited about the three principles and think that, oh, this would be a great way to make money, a fun way to make money, which is true, it is a fun way to make a living. But if money is here, I have to make money, I have to make money, that's an impediment to helping people.
Yeah.
So it makes you insecure. It makes you not think straight because you have something on it. Money is something that people have they have a lot on money, and that gets in the way. It's in the way. And that's all Sid's saying, is it's something that gets in the way of being of service to people. And when you have anything in the way, it impedes your creative process. It creates pressure.
Yeah, it creates pressure.
And anything that creates pressure in your relationship, in a helping relationship, in a partnership, anything that creates pressure is going to diminish impact.
Yeah. Well said. Well, we've done.
We doed it.
We doed it.
We doed it.
Yeah. So what?
So we would like.
Any questions you have, we'd be glad to
Anything else?
take a shot at it.
Yeah. So we have 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So we can open it up to comments, questions, discussion.
Faith?
I thank you, Bonnie, and I really want to thank the Pranskys for just their wisdom and their generosity in sharing so much with us. I've gotten so much out of today's webinar and your webinars on the missing link. So thank you very much. So I wanted to I had an insight around the woman who spoke about the phishing client. And what came to mind is I had a session recently with someone who wanted to discuss a dog bite, that his girlfriend had gotten bitten by a rescue dog that they have in their home. And I thought, gee, that's a kind of a odd way for him to want to spend the session. But in hearing him out, he was thinking through how he was going to react to his girlfriend around how she was going to deal with this rescue dog. And it was around his safety. So it was just very interesting to give him space to listen to how he was working this through.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't what I was expecting as a session,
yeah.
But it was something that was very important to him. And then once that was finished, we moved on to other things.
Yeah.
And
no, go ahead.
Just the one other thought. In the Enlightened Gardener, there is one of the chapters where the doubter of the group, they're at a river, or there's a river flowing through the park that they're in, and there's a lot of fish, and he's talking about how something about being very pessimistic, he can't see the fish. And then as the chapter goes on, you sense his level of consciousness rise, And then he can see all of these fish all of a
Mhm.
sudden. It's pretty remarkable. So that was all that I had to share.
You know, it reminds me of a story. I had a student once who was learning to teach, and she did all the talking. I hardly said a word. The whole hour and a half, she would talk. And then she'd have all these insights, and I would listen. She would talk, I would listen. She had all these insights, and at the end of the session, she thanked me for all the wisdom I'd given her, all the things that I had said. I didn't say anything. And this would happen week after week. And finally I said, you know, do you notice that you're the one that does all the talking, I do all the listening, and you have all the insights? Oh, no, that's not true. No. You do as much talking as I do. So it goes to the power of listening, to let people sort things out and find their own insight. Yeah.
So thank you both very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anyone else?
Dubin?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate again, thank you for this call. I don't know if you can see me. Thank you for sharing. I just love being in the space with you guys and with everybody. It's light, humorous, and but I'll get to the question, because this last number 13, right, the last paragraph, the last few lines, we have seen time and again that when our priority is being in service to humanity and being true to our wisdom, the practical aspects of life inevitably fall into place, often in ways we couldn't possibly have imagined. And then you talked about money and, the attachment to money, and then that lessening impact, right, when you're attached to it. So the question is around the practicality, because you guys have been in business and there is a practical nature of, bills to pay, and things to people to pay. I'm sure you have employees, like people to pay, whatever. There's a practical nature. And I have it as like, as a no, like what I know as a good idea, I haven't fully seen, is that, yes, when you do what you love and you're in service, right, the money will sort itself out. I know that as an idea. And what occurred to me is, well, I want to hear from you what you guys know as like a capital KNOW about being in service and the practicalities working.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because we don't pay attention to our bank account or how much money we're bringing in. We just don't go there. And that's, in my mind, that's to our credit.
Well, when we first learned these principles, and we were first learning from Sid, and we were so impacted by what we were learning and so in love with the teaching of this and sharing of this, and we basically had been in a different kind of practice, and when we changed, we lost all our clients.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
So we lost all our income.
Yeah.
We had no income. So we were building a practice by word of mouth, because we'd work with people and they get really affected, and then they'd send their friends. And but we would have to call the bank and say, hey, we can't pay our mortgage this month. Now, interestingly, it didn't bother. We weren't worried.
But we knew that we
were not worried about it.
We knew that we found a better mousetrap.
And we were very poor, but we didn't mind.
Yeah.
We didn't mind. We had a house. We had enough to eat. It's like we didn't have luxury, but we were really, really happy.
Yeah.
And we loved what we did. And we didn't think about, well, we had to think about money because we had to pay the mortgage, but we'd call the bank and they were really good to us. They'd say, okay, well, can you pay us next month? Well, I think so. But it was interesting to me that I didn't think about, well, what if I can't pay the net? I didn't go there. I just didn't go there. It was like weird. It was weird not to go there, but I didn't. And it worked out. It totally and completely worked out. And I don't know how and why. We were so in love with what we were doing and so in love with what we were doing. And we were working with anybody we could work with.
Yeah.
Anyone. We were so fired up about the understanding, so like we saw this new world and this new reality, and we were so hopeful about this really changing humanity, changing the world, changing the conditions of the world, changing the conditions of people's marriages, changing it just. And I think because it had changed us so much that we thought, wow, if it could change us so much, it can change other people so much. That's all we thought about. It was all our minds went to was how this could change the world. And that we were so singular in it. We didn't think about anything else.
I don't know where that fits in your question, but we did want to say that as soon as we fell in love with our work, and that made all the difference in the world.
But I think, the other thing, a piece of it is we were so happy that we didn't need things. People need things. They think they need things. Like they think they need a new car. They think they need a bunch of clothes, or they think they need to go on, fly on. Like when we went on vacation, we go camping.
Yeah.
Because that's all we could afford, but we loved it.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
It's like we loved everything we did. And so, but we didn't, because we're so happy, we didn't need a lot of things. So our expenses were really low. Really low. So we didn't, even though we were really poor, we didn't feel poor. We did not feel poor. Because we were so grateful for our understanding and so happy in our lives and so grateful for what was in our life. We didn't think about other things. We didn't think about what was wrong or what we needed. I don't know if that answers you. It was quite.
There's a lot, like things hit me, in there, and I think like the money aspect, the practicalities, it takes me away from the love of the work, and it feels hard sometimes because these things, especially when they seem very immediate, certain practicality, certain bills, certain things, and it just hit me in like the love of the work. I guess got a glimpse of what you experienced, having lived it in your insights. The love of this work, why I'm here, why we're all here. I believe, but I just speak for myself. The love of what I've seen is available through this understanding, the glimpse I've had of what's available through this understanding of falling in love with that. So I'm going to sit with that much and try and explain everything. But thank you for sharing.
No, I love that. I love,
Yeah.
I love that question. I love that. I loved your question. I really did. I just totally appreciate it because it, it really reminded me of that we lived in a, when people live in a feeling,
We lived in a bubble, really.
we lived in a feeling, a beautiful feeling. And when people live in a beautiful feeling, they don't need much.
Yeah.
And honestly, I know it's like what being around Sid, it was like it rubbed off. He lived in such an amazing feeling. He lived in such an impersonal life. And the impersonal is beauty. See, people don't realize the impersonal is beauty. It's beauty. And he lived in beauty. He lived in a beautiful feeling. And it rubbed off on us.
You did.
And we lived in this beautiful feeling. And we didn't need anything. And we shared that. It was nice that we had community between us because we shared that. It's wonderful to share, like one woman that talked earlier when she was talking about how she loved these platforms, these group meetings. And when she was talking, it was, I had the thought and the feeling. It's like you just swim in this wonderful, the feeling of this wonderful conversation. You just swim in this feeling of this wonderful conversation. And life is about feelings. Your experience is about feelings, and that's created by thought. And watch what you think. Think again. And it's really about what that other woman said about consciousness. It's like when you're focusing on the personal, it brings your consciousness down. And when you're focusing bigger, when you're focusing on the impersonal, on truth, when you're focusing on truth in a bigger way, it's like that brings a different feeling. That brings a beautiful feeling when you're focusing on the impersonal, on truth. And it's all about where your thinking goes, on the personal or the impersonal. The impersonal is a beautiful feeling. I don't know how else to say it. But we did live in a bubble, didn't we?
We did, yeah. We did. We had we had so little going for us, and we had no idea. We just thought we were living charmed life. Yeah. And I know there's a lot of people that can relate to that, because since you understood the principles, it's really given all of you charmed lives.
But I don't know that you appreciate what a beautiful feeling you have.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yes, yes, yes.
I mean,
And
you
there's
show up every time with a beautiful, I notice you and I think,
Yeah.
what a beautiful feeling that man has.
Oh yeah, I've seen some things. We've all seen some things, you know. It's like a movie. You know, I say like my life is like a movie. Like, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you tell people like that, how's that happen? Like that they go to Hollywood, they're like, we can't approve it. Like no one's gonna believe this. Like you're
yeah,
gonna so that's crazy. So it's like I hear I'm like, yo, this is crazy. And that's like the business side of it is because this is what I want to do for my life. This is my career. This is what, and being in those conversations, I'm like, yo, yeah, stranger than fiction. Someone put like, and this is available to everyone, and it's their own movie, and they have a director, infinite intelligence, which is to guide them in that, and it's been guiding them there anyway. It's what's always been there,
yeah.
you know. So it's not a new fit. Like it ain't some. Oh, we're gonna give you some new fanangled. It's like no, it's always there. It's always
Yeah.
been there. Wow. And actually, where you feel like the movie's going off track is actually it's like you appreciate the whole. Like that off track is part of being on track. Like there is
That's
no,
right.
you know. And I'm like, so everything is great. So there's no bad. There's no bad. Yeah, it might seem that way, but everything is great. And that's why I love these things and coming here and knowing that, you know, with the OGs, you guys, and like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Finesse.
Well, it's absolutely been our pleasure to talk
To you.
to you and engage you the way we have.
Yeah. And your contribution.
Yeah.
Something fell.
Well, thank you. I'll you know, just a couple more people I've talked for myself.
So we'll see you then next time. I don't know what next time will be, what we'll be doing next time, but
Well, we'll have a Merry Christmas.
yeah, and or
How about that?
or Happy Hanukkah
Yeah.
or whatever your holiday, whatever holiday you celebrate.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And Happy New Year as well.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, you guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye,
Happy
everyone.
holidays.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.